What's up guys, and welcome back to my 1991 Acura NSX. And in this video, which will be my first time driving this in 2024, it's currently January 1st, I'm going to be talking about my dilemma with this car. I've owned this car for 7 years. In 6 days, it will be exactly the 7-year mark for me. I bought this in early January of 2017, and at the time it had 108,600 miles. Now it has 121,320. That means I've driven it less than 13,000 miles in 7 years. I am starting to have second thoughts about whether I should continue to own this car. It is, well, let me just start it up and we'll go for a drive and I'll explain my thoughts. It'll be another stream of consciousness video. Alright, so 7 years and almost 13,000 miles with the NSX. Why am I in this dilemma? When I first bought the car, I actually daily drove it for a short amount of time, maybe 6 months to a year. I didn't baby it nearly as much as I do now. I just kept it in stock form. It had stock suspension, stock exhaust, stock wheels. The only thing I did was the steering wheel and shift knob that you see here. I just drove it as a comfortable grand touring sports car, and it was fantastic at that. It was comfortable, refined, the AC blows cold as it still does. Started up every time. The person I bought it from was super meticulous. He did a full engine out refresh, all the hoses, gaskets, everything back in 2015 or 2016. So I bought this car in immaculate shape, and it still is more or less immaculate. There's a few imperfections on the outside, a couple of small rock chips, tear on the seat here, but overall this car is about as clean of an NSX with 121,000 miles as you'll find out there. I love the color, Sebring silver. Obviously, I've done some mods to it since I bought the car 7 years back. I have the socket bomb Öhlins Grand Touring spec, super comfortable while still giving the car a really nice stance. I have these Advan wheels, some stickier tires, Pride V2 RFL exhaust, and the socket bomb front AP Racing big brake kit and their custom rear brakes as well. The car basically is sitting how I want it right now for a comfortable grand touring sports car that you can enjoy on the occasional canyon drive. So with all that being said, why am I considering maybe not keeping this car much longer? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, I will admit I do have car ADD. I tend to go through cars really quickly, and for me that's always been the daily and track car that I used to replace frequently. The BRZ, obviously now I have the Integra Type S. Before that I had a couple of Porsches and S2000. That would be the car that I would always replace every 1 to 2 years, while the NSX stayed rock steady, solid in my garage as my forever car. But 7 years later, I don't always grab the keys to this NSX, and it comes down to the fact that as I'm getting older, more mature, more appreciative of modern tech and creature comforts, my default is to always grab the keys to my Integra. And before that it was the BRZ. Because those cars are newer, they don't require as much care. This NSX, as it appreciates, as it gets older, as the rubber gaskets and things start to wear out, it's a car that I don't always feel 100% confident in when I start it up. Granted, it works. It works 99% of the time, and yet it's still in the back of my head. What if this one time I drive it is going to be the time that something breaks? I get hit by something. I seem to always be finding at least one excuse to not drive the car, unless it's purely for pleasure. And given that I don't go for a lot of pleasure drives in my own cars anymore, and it is a bummer, but in order to keep up with the channel, I do need to prioritize driving other cars, not my own cars. Outside of the comparison videos and track days I do with my Integra, you know, I don't drive my NSX much at all. There's not a whole lot of reason to. I've done most of the comparison videos I could think of with the NSX. I've compared it to Porsches, compared it to Lotuses. There aren't really that many more content opportunities for this car because of my focus on my YouTube channel right now. It's not my full-time job by any means. It's still more of a hobby, but still I want to take it more seriously. And so driving this car has been just deprioritized for me. Every time I do drive it, like right now, I have a great time. It's one of the most special driving experiences I think you can have for under $100,000. But because I'm not driving it much, it makes me feel like I'm not extracting the most value out of it. And that leads me on to the next thought in the train of thoughts, which is, what is this car worth right now, and what could I get in its place, hypothetically? That could be a car that I extract more value out of, whether it's taking it to the track and actually learning a new platform and having the ability to track two different cars, both my Integra Type S and my other car. Not that the NSX isn't trackable, but it's not a car that I want to track. It's old. Things are going to break. I am going to chip up the exterior. It's not going to be as pristine as it is now if I start tracking it. And what value will I get out of tracking it? Not a whole lot. It's an old car that needs that extra bit of care. And at the end of the day, it's not going to be a fantastic performer. Will I be able to drive it as hard as I drive my Integra Type S or my old BRZ? No. The answer is a definitive no. And so that got me thinking, again, if I got something else to replace this car with, I could have another car that I could track hard and really enjoy to the fullest. Something that invigorates me to actually extract value out of it. I would think this car should fetch north of $70,000. So at that price point, what else could I get out there that would satisfy my focus on extracting value out of my cars? And that's where the real dilemma comes into play. I'll be honest, if I could get, say, $100,000 for this car, there are other cars that I would like to own. A Cayman GT4, for example, the first generation 981. It's a car I could track, it's a car I could drive on the street, it's a car I can make videos with. It speaks to me as a driver. It's mid-engine with a limited slip diff, good steering, great suspension and brakes from the factory. I've talked about that at length in my numerous GT4 reviews. That's just an example, right? At that $100,000 price point, there are cars I think I would choose over the NSX. Will they be as special? No, I think at the end of the day, this is still the most special car that I've driven for under 6 figures. I can't think of a single car I would want for under, let's say, $80,000 that would both be a great value extraction car for me, as well as giving me that little bit of feeling of I'm driving something special enough at least, that elicits some sort of emotion from me. The Integra, while I do love it and I respect it so much as a car, it's not an emotional experience. And while the NSX is, it takes it too far to that extreme and minimizes the value I can extract from it. And so, what is a car for under $80,000 that achieves a much better balance of those two sides of the spectrum? Porsche Cayman S of any generation, that's not going to do it for me. A GTS model maybe gets close, maybe, but just knowing that the GT4 is out there and can be had for, let's say, an extra 30 grand, more or less, makes me think, no, I should just save up for a GT4 if I really want an excellent Porsche Cayman experience. Or same thing with the 911. But with Porsches, you're really going down the rabbit hole because there's always that better version, that better trim level, that better model out there, the GT models, the RS models. Given that I've driven so many in the last year, 2 years, it doesn't feel quite right to get something that's not that pinnacle, the true GT model, I should say. Maybe not the RS because they're just so far out of reach. I've told myself a number of times recently that my next Porsche if I do get a Porsche, will be a GT car. I'm not going to settle for anything less. But outside of the 981 GT4, I don't think any GT cars are sub $100,000 right now, and I'm excluding the 996 GT3 because that's just not a car I want. But what about other manufacturers? BMWs, Lotus. I mean, there are some great cars out there for $80,000 or less, don't get me wrong, but none of them really make me think, yeah, that's a car I could definitively get into and give up my NSX for. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe you guys in the comments can let me know what options are out there that I should seriously consider. It would have to be a rear-wheel drive car. Even all-wheel drive cars, I don't think I would be that keen to replace the NSX with something that's less pure. I want a pure driving experience, something that I can enjoy on track at the limit and also enjoy as a street car, something that I can commute in every now and then, take on date nights, and everything in between. Doesn't have to have a back seat. It doesn't have to be practical really whatsoever, but it needs to have that perfect blend of usability, performance, and that emotionality that I get from the NSX. And I just don't know what that car would be. And so that's where my head's at right now. I would love to know everyone's thoughts down in the comments. Having owned this car for 7 years now, is it time to try something different? Is it time to have something that would give me more value as a driver, as a normal human being who needs a car to get from point A to point B, as well as take on the track and hone my driving skills with? I'm now in a front-wheel drive platform as my track car, and while I do really enjoy the Integra Type S, it's still not that razor-edged, thrill-inducing driving experience that a rear-wheel drive car would be. And so it's got me thinking, should I get into another proper rear-wheel drive sports car? But it's gonna take a lot of convincing. This is an early stage in this thought process that I'm having. Again, it's a stream of consciousness that I'm sharing with you all right now. Thought it would be good to crowdsource some thoughts, some insights. For those of you who have been in a similar position before, how did it play out? What choice or what path did you end up choosing? Do you regret it at all? Are there any massive pitfalls in any of the logic that I just mentioned? Does anyone want to make me an offer on the NSX? Make me an offer I can't refuse, and maybe the decision will be easier than I'm making it out to be right now. Thank you all for tuning in, and looking forward to an amazing 2024 wherever it takes me. I recognize that I have my dream car, and whether or not I'm considering getting rid of it, that's a first world problem, and I fully recognize that. All right, with that, I'll see you all in the next one.